Hello and welcome to Storytime. Have you ever just wanted to curl up on the couch and read a good book, but didn't feel like reading? Well, how about listening to one instead? Today's book is called Shadowfall, Book 1 of the Godslayer Chronicles by James Clemens. Page 7. A fallen knight, he kept his stripes hidden as much as possible, letting his black hair grow long and ragged, hanging over his storm-gray eyes. He kept his head bowed away from the sight of others. Still, anger burned deep behind his ribs, a fire that never dampened. Though it might smolder to embers, it was always there, always ready to flare. Yorga lunged an arm at him, meaning to grab a fistful of hair. A mistake. Tyler rocked out of the way, pivoting on his clubbed arm. He lashed out with his other, swiftly bringing his elbow around to strike the bridge of Yorga's nose as he leaned down, bone crushed. Tyler didn't feel it, but he heard it along the howl that followed. It wasn't a cry of pain, so much as outrage. Yorga lurched backward, blood spraying from both nostrils. Borgo roared, coming around his partner's side. Tyler rolled to his scarred back, kicking out with his legs. He knew where to strike. The heels of his boots smashed into the larger man's knees. Borgo's legs flew out from under him. He toppled forward toward Tyler, arms outstretched, face a mask of rage, spittle flying. Tyler still was on his back, on the cobbles, rolled to the side, wrapping himself in his tattered cloak. Borgo crashed to the stones beside him, landing as Tyler had a moment before to face first. But the slave fighters knew how to work together. Yorga's fingers clamped on Tyler's ankle. With the blood flecking from his snarled lips, Yorga hauled Tyler toward him. As a squire, Tyler had once fallen off his horse, tangling a boot in the stallion's stirrup, and had been dragged behind the beast. Yorga was stronger. With a grunt, Tyler flipped from his back to his stomach. The Amen had a grip on his mangled leg, the one with the frozen knee. It was like holding a bent shepherd's crook. The twisted forced Yorga to loosen his grip, lest his own wrist be broken. Partially free, Tyler slammed his boot heels together, catching 3 of Yorga's fingers between them. Yorga half lifted Tyler and tossed him away. He rolled on his shoulder and allowed the momentum to put distance between himself and his attackers. He stopped in a half crouch, back to his enemies, glancing over his shoulder. He ached everywhere, his small reserves of strength ebbing. Yorga helped up Borga, fire boned and burnt in both men's eyes. Tyler had caught them by surprise. That was over. Together, the Amen approached, stepping to either side to flank him. "Hold!" The voice froze them all. It came from further up the street. Borgo, and Yorga parted to reveal a single figure in black, surcoat, trimmed in silver, with matching cloak, standing still. No chain, no armor, no shield. Only a sheathed sword hung at his waist. The black diamond on the hilt's pommel glowed with its own light. That was all the protection needed here. The figure had been blessed in grace. A shadow knight. The same light from the diamond shone in the eyes of the warrior. Tyler could not match that gaze. He turned. A wind caught the edge of the knight's cloak, willowing it out. Maybe it was a trick of moonlight, but as the cloak swept across the knight's form, darkness consumed the figure, vanishing him halfway. Tyler knew it was not a trick of light, but a blessing of shadow. The grace of such nights to move unseen, to desert into darkness and away. At night there was no greater foe. Borgo and Yorga knew this, and bowed out of the way. Heads lowered, backs bent, Yorga dropped to a knee as the knight stepped past him. "What is the mishap here?" the knight asked, his heavy gaze settling on Tyler. Rather than looking up, Tyler maintained a focus on the knight's boots. There was much to tell from a man's boots. Calf skin and molar horn, fine-tooled leathers from the greater coast, worn well at the arch from riding hundreds of reaches in the stirrup. Since none of the submarine owls were more than 5 reaches across, the knight must be an outsider to this sea-locked realm. Perhaps a blessed courier from another god realm, or perhaps a new conscript called in service of the god here, Marine of the Submarine Isles. Either way, he's new to this cloak, Tyler concluded, or he wouldn't scuff his boots with such a petty street brawl. Borgo finally coughed loose his tongue. This scabber were a begging in Goody Master Rhine's tavern house. We were bending his arm a bit to send him back down to the punt. Is that so? The knight asked. Tyler heard the weary amusement in the other's tone. From my vantage, I say he was the one doing the bending. Borgo blustered. The boots Tyler had been studying stepped closer. Your name, sire? Tyler remained silent. He didn't bother to look up. There was no need. The knight's features would be hidden behind a mask of maslin, a face cloth cut from the same blessed material as the knight's cloak. All that was ever seen of a knight's face were the eyes, and the triple stripes that blended into the maslin. Is what they claim true? The knight continued. You are aware, sire, that begging of coin is not allowed after sunset. As answer, Tyler reached into his pocket and tossed a pair of brass pinchers on the cobbles before the knight's toes. Ah, so it seems the scuffed hero has a coin or two. Sire, perhaps your pinches are better spent in a tavern of the lower city. A toe nudged the bits of brass back toward Tyler. Such rare kindness earned a curious glance toward his benefactor. The knight was tall and lithe, a willow switched in a cloak. His face was indeed wrapped in maslin. Eyes glowed at him. Tyler saw them pinch in surprise. A step was taken back. He's a striped knight, Borgo said, a shifting vow breaker. Tyler pocketed his coin and gained his feet. He stared the knight up and down, anger burning away shame. He read the disgust in the other's stance. He met the other's gaze fully for the first time. Fear not, disgrace is not contagious, sir. He turned swiftly away, but not swiftly enough. Sir Notch? The knight spoke his name with a raw shock. Tyler, Sir Notch? Tyler's steps faltered. 1,000 reaches from his homelands, and still he could not escape his cursed name. It is you, sir, is it not? Tyler kept his back to him. You are mistaken, Sir Knight. Curse my blessed eyes if I am. Boots scuffed closer. Face me. Tyler knew better than disobey a shadow knight. He turned. Beyond the knight's shoulder, he spotted Borgo and Yorga slinking back to the wooden frog, happy to escape the knight's attention. They knew their game had ended, but Borgo stopped at the threshold. He wiped blood and snot from his lips and cast a murderous stare at Tyler, a promise of pain to come, a debt he meant to collect. Then the brawlers pushed back into the tavern. Tyler's attention focused back to the fellow before him. As I was saying, you mistake me for someone else, sir. As rebuttal, the knight reached to clasp at his throat. A shadowy waft of maslin fluttered free. Tyler instinctively glanced down. Only a knight was allowed to see another knight's features. Face me, sir. Command lay thick on the other's tongue. Tyler trembled and obeyed. He found a familiar countenance framed within the cloak's hood. Tyler knew those features. High cheekbones, white blonde hair, amber eyes. The young knight was all sunlight and autumn fields, in contrast to Tyler's stormy and dark countenance. Time sailed back. Tyler recognized the peach-faced boy behind the bearded man who stood before him now. Perel? The last time he had seen this face, there had been only 2 stripes. Perel had been one of his 3 squire lads, back in Tashijan, under his tutelage before him. He glanced away, his heart aching. The shadow knight dropped to one knee before him. Sir Notch, no, Tyler refused. No longer Sir Notch. It is simply De Notch. Never. To me you will always be hailed as Sir. Tyler twisted and stumbled away. Get off your knees, Perel. You shame yourself and your cloak. It seems even this small task I have failed to order. Training you so poorly for your station. He continued down the street. A scuffle sounded behind them as his former squire gained his feet and fled abreast of him. All that I am, I owe to you. The words cut like poisoned daggers. Tyler hurried on, knowing he could not flee a blessed night, but perhaps he could escape his own memories. Perel kept beside him. I will speak to you, sir. Much has changed back in Tashijan. If you would meet with me on the morrow. Tyler stopped and swung toward Perel. His chest heaved on swells of shame and misery. Damn your eyes, look at me, Perel. He held up his crooked arm. The knight you knew is gone, long buried. I am a scabber out of punt.